All right, so we got a lot of government stuff to talk about. First thing, though, is we got some breaking news here. I got to get your take on this, given you are a government guy. I'm sure the chat will be curious to know. Some people will agree, some people will disagree, but it is what it is. Alex Karp just was asked in an article by the Financial Times last night who he supports in the 2024 election. He says, political correctness in the party is a huge problem. The Democrats can't understand the cost of it. I personally am not thrilled by their direction, but how far can they go before I reconsider? I am voting against Trump. So we know Karp has historically been on the left. He's not been a supporter of Trump. He's critiqued the left for not being able to talk to other people. Obviously, Peter Thiel, who supports Trump, and Karp still get along, right? Even though they have different political views. But this is the first time Karp actually came out explicitly and said he's not supporting Trump in this election. We know from like 2016 videos that he's never really liked Trump. What is your take? Do you think it has any implications on the business, or this is just his, political feeling and how he thinks of the election?
So I feel he's obviously entitled to have his political views and beliefs. And he made it explicitly clear he's not for, and without getting into all of the politics, he's not for Joe Biden and whoever the Democrat nominee is. He is against Trump, and that's specifically Trump. Yeah. He doesn't say the Republican Party or the GOP. He says Trump. Now, whether you are for Trump or against Trump, that doesn't not matter in this context. What matters is what you asked me. Because Palantir is such a big political government entity, and they have 3,000 employees, I'm going to assume out of the 3,000 employees, it's probably a pretty close to like 60-40. Maybe it's 70-30 in terms of Democrat, Republican. I wouldn't be surprised if the company overall, from an individual standpoint, is a little bit more on the left. But I wouldn't also be surprised if we took a survey and over the years they shifted to the right. So that wouldn't surprise me. But from a leadership standpoint, obviously those voices hold a little bit more weight. Karp is he calls himself I'm pretty sure, social, Democrat liberal. So, and then you have Thiel, who's obviously more of a libertarian. Obviously, he is backing Trump, not as vocal, but we'll get into Vance and Hellberg, Jacob Hellberg, who's Karp's senior advisor, he is supporting Trump.
He loves Trump.
He gave $1 million to Trump. And, for people that need to wake up a little bit in the world, Jacob Hellberg is Jewish. Shouldn't be a big shocker. And one of the big things, and that's the thing that I have to bring up, is what Karp is saying, and Karp is one of the tribesmen, if you will, and from the average point of view, I'm going to assume one side is cozying up and partnering with the terrorists. The other side still wants to treat them how we normally do, which is eliminate them and make sure it's for the greater good of the world. And for someone like Jacob Hellberg, who was always a left on the Democrat, I'm pretty certain till this time, it was very easy for him to go over to the right, strictly on, if I go over there, they'll kill me. So, and never mind the fact that he's gay. So that's a whole other part, is with these gay for queer Palestine people, they need to wake up. You can't do that there. Then you obviously have Lonsdale, because he was mentioned in the article as well. And both Lonsdale and Hellberg both were in support of Trump and Vance. And Vance, for people that don't know, he obviously has a long history with Thiel. He,
Let's transition to that really quick. So let's get into the Vance thing, and then we'll get into all the government contracts. So JD Vance, not elected, but I guess elected by Trump as his potential VP if they win the election. Peter Thiel funded his campaign, funded his VC firm. JD Vance was poor in Ohio, grew up to graduate Yale Law School, started a venture capital firm, named it Naraya, which is an object from the Lord of the Rings. Obviously, Palantir, Lord of the Rings. He worked at Mithril Capital, Peter Thiel's VC firm. So there's a very rich collection of history between these two. And my thesis here, and I'm curious what you think, is Peter Thiel has been very unvocal about this election. He even hesitant to say that he voted, or that he would vote for Trump at an interview a couple of weeks ago. He seems like he didn't care. Maybe it's because he knew that he doesn't need to be as vocal as he was in 2016 at the RNC, because his guy, the guy he's given $20 million to over the past couple of years, is going to be at the right ear of the president for the next 4 years if they win. What do you think about the JD Vance connection? And do you think that really will help Palantir's government business over the next 4 years?
So I'll start with that by talking about my own speculation on Thiel. And clearly, I do not live in his head, and I would love to for a day. But I would imagine the way he's looking at it from this political cycle is he was much more vocal. He was much more in the spotlight when he first backed Trump. And Trump won. And, I feel Thiel didn't get a big enough return on his investment the first go round.
Yep.
That's what I personally think. I don't think he regretted it. I just think he regretted being a little bit too much in the spotlight. But also, that's not possible for him to control, especially in today's political environment. You say anything about A, B, C, and D, and they can dice that up to a political thing, and you're now on one side or the other.
Also, real quick, when he supported Trump 2016 to 2020, Palantir wasn't public. I mean, they went public when Trump left. So really the benefit to Palantir, maybe because they weren't a public company, wasn't that evident yet.
And if you really want to, just the quick timeline history, the first people to bring Palantir in the government was Obama-Biden administration. Wendy is from that administration, the DOD. She was part of that administration. So that's where it really got into the government in real, big, thick times. Then Trump comes in and out. Obviously, he loses in 2020. I'm sure Thiel backed him again. He lost. Then this go round, he's backing him. More Palantir people are backing him as well, especially in higher up roles, and are being a little bit more vocal about it. But then you get the whole selection with Vance.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how early Thiel knew that he was going to pick Vance. I'm sure he probably knew a couple weeks, maybe a month before everybody, the real decision was made. I think, will Palantir benefit? Yes. Are they going to benefit immediately? No. This is a very, very long-term thing. So what my thinking is, Trump wins. They have their 4 years. Vance runs. And hopefully, in a Palantir lens, he wins. And you have 12 years. And with Vance on defense, because, he went to the Marines after 9/11. He's very big on it. He doesn't want us to be fighting in unnecessary wars, because you've heard what he had to say on certain subjects like Ukraine.
Yeah, like he went into the Marines after 9/11 to fight in the Iraq War, and then he realized this whole war was kind of based on bullshit, right? So he has a very unique perspective there.
Right. But I think with him, he still understands we have to pour and invest and innovate in our defense, in our military, to make sure we are protected and to safeguard our allies and our national security all over the globe. But it's going to be through the final, the hopeful thing that Sean went to Congress about is they are going to finally get that 5% increase to software spend. I don't think that's going to happen in necessarily fiscal year 25. It's not happening. It's nearly the same amount, 1%. It might happen in fiscal year 26. We don't know yet, especially if Trump and Vance win, because Vance, he comes from that mindset of having to constantly innovate through tech. And he also understands using and knowing Palantir, because he knows Palantir, obviously. I believe one of the companies that Thiel's on the board of uses Foundry. It's not going to be a surprise to him. Are they going to just say, give Palantir this $10 billion contract because we know you? No, that's not going to happen.
That would be nice, though. That would be pretty cool. That'd be cool.
I mean, they might get one or two like that eventually along the way once they're way more established. I saw a very good tweet the other day. It basically said how much money Lockheed has made over the past 12 trailing months per week. I think it was $1.3 billion.
Wow.
So
that is a decent amount of money. And Lockheed's, they're entrenched in the government.
So if Lockheed is let's call them the premier prime hardware defense contractor, if they're making $1.3 billion a week, and granted, there's war all over the globe, they're constantly having to make, missiles to replenish ammo, all of it. I get it. How much do you think eventually, once it's officially ingrained and at a scale like Lockheed, that the prime software contractor is going to make per week? Is it going to be $1.3 billion? Maybe. What if it's $2 billion? Think about it, because you only have, let's call it 1,000 F-16s. But if every F-16 and every F-35 and every Striker and every Reaper and every Gray Eagle, and they're all connected to Palantir, you're going to need a lot more money.
Well, let me ask you this question. So let's say Trump gets elected and we're done with Ukraine. So we don't have really like war in Ukraine because Trump just doesn't want to fund it. And Trump doesn't want to defend Taiwan anymore. Is that bearish for Palantir in any way, that we aren't kind of interacting with the world's problems, given Trump is more America first?
So I will say this, and this is also very speculative. The war in Ukraine versus the Taiwan issue is completely different. And they both, by Trump and Vance, they both have very, very similar ideas in terms of willing to invest and safeguard Taiwan versus the current war in Ukraine. I think they can say what they want to say politically to get into the office. I think it would be a wonderful thing overall if they can end the war the first day in office and people would stop dying, and hopefully that would, bring more stability to the world, and, that would be economic benefit for all. The reality of the situation is that's not going to happen on day one. It would be nice, but that's not going to happen. So they're just going to do what they need to do for polls and to get into the office and to win. Once you're physically in the office and you're trying to communicate with an enemy about peace, it's not winning an election. It's completely different.
Agreed.
Could he do it? Yeah, of course he can do it. Is it very possible? Potentially. Is Zelensky willing to, give up part of Ukraine? I don't know. That's a question for him and his advisors that need to answer and really look at what's going on and say, how many more months or years can we last at this? Because like I've been saying, the problem now is manpower. Eventually, you're just going to run out of bodies. And when you're throwing out 65-year-old men, it's not that they can't fight. It's just that they're not in the prime of their, physical peak to be a premier prime warfighter. So that's also part of the problem, is you just run out of men. And, we'll see. Taiwan, they're still going to defend Taiwan. I really think it's a major issue in terms of geography. I think they don't want to because it's extremely expensive to do that because of how far it is and specifically how close it is to China. But at this point, I don't think they really have a choice. The chips are too important to the world, and they've committed too much money, and they've made their bed, and they're going to lay in it, which I agree and I support. I don't know how it's going to work. I think with Trump and Vance in office, I think, the response would be more aggressive and it would be a little bit more beneficial to Taiwan because China is very, very aggressive. I'll take my speculation hat on right now. I'm pretty positive that we will. Well, there is titans in the world right now. That is without a doubt. There is a titan in the world operating as we speak. And I think it's in the Philippines. So if you have Titan, because think about it, it's long range precision fires. Where else are you putting a Titan in an area that can really watch Taiwan and China that closely other than satellites up and on the ground? It's got to be the Philippines. If you pull up a map, it's got to be that. And if you read, one of the best Twitter accounts, it's actually called like Indo-Pacific, like command, it's like every day it's China, aggravating the Philippines. And do they know it's because they have a Titan and they're with the U.S. military? Yeah, they're probably pissed about that, but it's to show them like we're not backing down. So they're not going to back down from the China issue. The Ukraine issue, that will be very interesting to see, because the other thing is just on that is, yes, they want to end the war, but from a innovative science standpoint, they very much want that battlefield to remain open.
To get the R&D. Right.
Yes, both sides.
Yeah.